Next up on the 1966 Lincoln Continental is preparing for a cosmetic project. So previously, I had pulled out the gas tank, and recently I also pulled out the rear axle. And with those now out of the car, before putting them back in, I want to clean out the undercarriage of the car. And in order to do that, I actually need to pull the exhaust, including the resonators, the mufflers, all the brackets, anything that's under the car that's going to get in my way as I try and clean up that undercarriage. So let's go get started on that now.
Now you'll see here, this is where the gas tank will go, and I've already cleaned up the red primer, which is original. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to clean up underneath the exhaust here on the floorboard. And so in order to do that, I'm going to pull the exhaust, and I'm going to start back here in the corner with this clamp holding on that end of the muffler. So we're going to pull that exhaust now. Now we're going to pull this bracket. This bracket is held on with a U-bolt and these 2 1/2-inch nuts. So we're going to pull that out now. All right, with that bracket now off, we're going to follow our way up. And the next part we're going to take off is this right here, which is going to be using a 9/16 socket. With that part now off, we're going to go down further, and we're now going to remove this part of the exhaust using that same 9/16 socket. As you can see, there are a couple of brackets that are still holding up the exhaust, as well as this U-bolt here. However, before we take that off, we're going to go to the other side to remove the muffler in the passenger side rear corner. I had already previously removed the U-bolt that was holding up the tailpipe, and that was when I was removing the leaf spring. So now we're going to come to the next point where I now need to remove this part of the exhaust, and again, that's using that 9/16 socket. Interestingly, so this is the type of bolt that goes inside of the exhaust. And so as you can see, there's no head here. And as I was trying to remove this one, it just kept spinning freely. And I realized that this bolt has actually been replaced before, as it has a standard bolt head on the top. So I actually had to pull out my trusted and tried and true 9/16 open end wrench so I can actually get this last bolt off now. Moving down the line, I'm now going to pull off this, again using that same 9/16 socket. We're now to the last part where there's a total of 6 nuts left. So there's going to be 2 on that bracket, 2 on this U-joint that is holding these 2 pipes together, and 2 on this bracket. Now in a perfect world, I'll be able to remove this U-bolt and be able to separate the exhaust pipes here. However, given these have been together for about 60 years, there's a good chance that those are not going to come loose. And I may have to drop this whole assembly down together by loosening the nuts here and there on that bracket. So let's get started and see what happens. I successfully got the nuts off of the U-bolt for the exhaust bracket, but I can't get the U-bolt out in its current position. So I'm just going to pull this whole assembly out, which means loosening both of the 9/16 nuts off of each bracket and just pulling that whole piece down together. I also hadn't previously sprayed this overnight with PB Blaster to make it easy for it to separate. So we'll just do that with it off the car. With the exhaust fully dropped down, the last thing to do is to remove these 2 brackets that are held in to the floorboard. It looks like there's some studs that come down, and it's held in with 19/16 nuts. So I'm going to take all 4 of those off now. And the last thing I'm going to remove before starting on the cleanup project under the car is removing the bump stop from both sides. And both are held on with a bracket held on by 2 1/2-inch bolts. So I'm going to yank those out now.
And that's a wrap. The exhaust is out, the bump stops are out, all the brackets that were underneath the car are now out. And so we can now get started on the cleanup project on the undercarriage. So stay tuned for more content of the 1966 Lincoln Continental. Thanks, guys.